Hey everybody, welcome back to Guy Shrink, the podcast where we talk about what keeps a guy up awake at night. Today we're going to have a great conversation with a very good friend, and we're going to talk about what happens to a guy when he retires from his career, and how does one get back on the swing of things, or get back into whatever you want to call it. I'm especially concerned about how does a guy find meaning and purpose in his life after what he's been doing for 25 or 30 years. Not suddenly evaporates, but leaves, and he doesn't have to get up in the morning and go to work, and rather wakes up and go, well, now I'm at home. Now what to do? My guest today is a really good friend, and his name is Joe Gerhardinger, and Joe's a buddy from church, but specifically he retired from a 25 plus year career of teaching mathematics and astronomy at one of the local schools, an all girls Catholic academy here in Toledo, Ohio. And I want to welcome Joe. He's going to share about his journey and give us some ideas about what it takes to get back in the swing of things or find meaning and purpose later in life, and give some nuggets of wisdom and guidance. So, Joe, welcome to Guy Shrink.
Well, thank you. Boy, that's an introduction. I hope this conversation lives up to all those goals.
It will. Sure it will.
Yeah. I know I'll enjoy it at least.
Yes, for sure. Sure. So I'm in my, the cave is what my wife calls my office here at the house, and you're at home.
Yes.
In a room at your place. And our engineer, Jordan Valdiviez, is in Los Angeles right now. That's where Jordan's living. And so we're doing all this in the miracle of the internet. So, Joe, I always begin the conversation here at Guy Shrink with what keeps a guy awake at night, and what might have kept you awake at night? What keeps a guy like you awake at night?
Yeah, essentially, it's what you alluded to a little bit. So I had a wonderful career teaching, and for a variety of reasons, all of them good, I decided it was time to hang that career up. But since then, I haven't quite found anything to occupy enough time or enough of my kind of psychic energy. So essentially, if I'm awake at night, it's because I'm wondering, is there something I ought to be doing with either my day tomorrow, or in longer term with the year ahead or the rest of my life ahead? Am I squandering, the privileges and the opportunities ahead of me? Am I taking advantage? Do I have a responsibility to do more? That's what'll keep me up at night.
Boy, that's a lot. That's different than heartburn. Or fighting about your Ohio State football team.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it comes and goes.
What's that?
It comes and goes. I mean,
comes and goes.
Can
you tell us a little bit about your teaching career? I mean, you spent 25 plus years there at Notre Dame, and how did you get into that? And then how did that develop over the years? And then can you talk a little bit about your decision to say, this has been a great run, and I need to do something else in my life?
Sure. All good questions. When I was in high school, I went to St. John's Jesuit, a boys' school here in town. And by the time I was a senior and thinking about college and thinking about what to do with my life, I looked around at my teachers. At the time, I think they were mostly men. And it seemed to me that they enjoyed coming to work every day. I mean, they, had their stresses and their disappointments, but it seemed like they enjoyed what they were doing. So in the back of my mind, I thought, that would be a possible avenue for me. I didn't major in education or anything. That wasn't an option where I went to college, but I was a math major. And then later on, I went to get licensure for teaching after getting my math degree. And so, I became a teacher. It took me a while to find a job, but eventually I found one here. I think, the market goes in cycles, and it took me a while to find one, but I was lucky enough to find one here in my hometown. And it was 98% enjoyable, my career teaching. You mentioned it was an all-girls school. It is an all-girls school. The girls are very sweet. They were smart, but my overall memory of them is they were sweet young ladies to teach. I didn't have any problems of discipline or motivation, and I got a lot of thank yous, and it was an environment that I felt good to come into every day.
Okay,
I was lucky. I was lucky enough to teach my niece and my two daughters.
Oh, really?
And that was a privilege. All three of them. And I remember when my second daughter started. This was around the time I was thinking, can I really sustain this for the rest of my working career? And I told myself, well, when she graduates, I'm going to give myself permission to graduate too. I kind of envisioned us, walking down the aisle, her with her diploma in hand, and me and my mortarboard too, as we had to dress up and kind of walking out the doors together. It didn't quite work out that way, but yeah, her last year was my last year.
Oh, yeah,
And
that we graduated together.
yeah, so it was the right time, just because technology has changed a lot of teaching, and I was pretty good with it, but I could foresee, in the coming years, I wouldn't quite maybe take advantage of all the technology options that I ought to have. And it was just a little harder every year to kind of get excited about things I knew I ought to get excited about. So I kind of feel like I went out on a high. I was probably the best I'd ever be at teaching.
Oh, that's
And
great. Wow.
well, yeah, it was a good time to end. Of course, I have, things I miss and so forth, but it was the right time to end when I did, definitely.
That's really great that you had that, so to speak, self-perception that you knew that I'm really at the top of my game here, and this is a good time to exit, as opposed to floundering around a couple of years of unhappiness and I can't wait to retire,
Yeah.
which then sets into motion post-retirement that you're really kind of grouchy or
Me.
unfulfilled or whatever, and you did that. Now you taught math. I said math, but that's a big spectrum. So what specific things did you teach at Notre Dame?
It was mostly, I guess you'd call it the upper level mathematics, juniors and seniors. Although I did teach every year eventually in my career, but it was mostly the junior and senior year mathematics. So I guess it culminated in AP calculus, and while I was there, Notre Dame became an international baccalaureate school. So I also taught IB math.
Okay.
But really, I don't think there was a math course I didn't teach, except for perhaps the basic math one, algebra. I'm not sure I could have sustained a career
Teaching algebra what?
just teaching. Yeah. So I was very lucky.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Let x equal 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those days in high school of algebra 1. Oh, that was terrifying.
Yeah, we all have our days.
Exactly. Well, you also kind of, I think you said you'd also taught astronomy there, which would be a really cool subject.
It was fun to teach. It's always been an interest of mine, and I had a few classes in graduate school. And Notre Dame was a great place to teach, in that if a teacher had an idea for a course and proposed it, and it kind of made sense for enrollment and fit into the curriculum and added to the girls' experience, the administration would take it seriously, and this one was approved. The same thing happened with a computer programming course that I thought we ought to have, and that I knew I would like teaching.
Okay.
So yeah, Notre Dame was very good about that, and it was a really good gig to be there due to a variety of circumstances, I guess.
It's so great to hear you say, I was a teacher for 25 plus years, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's so good to hear that teaching is an admirable career, and that you really made a difference. I'm sure you made a big difference in a lot of kids' life, because I know some of the girls that went there, and they pretty much all had you at one time or another too. And what a great experience that was for them. I'm really kind of intrigued by what you said about I'm at my A game. What was some of the criteria or thoughts or ideas you had about this is a good time in my career to move out of it? What were some of your criteria that put you, other than my daughter's going to graduate, this is a good time for me to leave too?
It felt like I kind of knew what the next year would bring, and the year after, and the year after. In other words, yeah, I had luck, proposing those new courses. And when we became an IB school, I was one of the teachers teaching those sets of new courses. But I kind of realized there's probably going to be nothing new to me or for me if I were to stay on another 10 or 15 or 20 years. I have a couple friends who are English teachers, and even if you teach the same English class, new work is being produced all the time. And so, an English teacher might never have taught, I don't know, Toni Morrison or, some of the writers of color and the women writers that's just, it would have been new material essentially. And although mathematics is certainly a living subject too, that's probably not as true at the high school level. So new mathematics is being done and it interests me, but it probably isn't going to find its way into something I teach.
Okay. Okay.
So I kind of realized, yeah, this is as good as it gets, and it's probably not going to change much. I've done most of what I could do here, and yeah, I think it was time.
Okay, that's a really good thought there. What I know about you, I mean, you're kind of a guy that looks for adventure, and my teaching adventure has kind of reached its limit. I need to do something else. But well, can we talk a little bit about the psychology of, I call it psychology of retirement. I have a good friend that doesn't call it retirement; he calls it refirement, which I think is kind of good. So, some of the things that you went through in your head as you stepped out of that school for the last time, and we went home, and you began. Now I'm at home. What were some of the issues you found yourself struggling with or thinking about?
Yeah, well, I probably didn't time it all that well in retrospect, because I mentioned it was, when my second daughter graduated, and my son is 2 years younger than that. So essentially, my retirement from teaching pretty much coincided with the family dynamic changing. The kids going off to college, and my role as a parent being quite a bit lessened. So it was kind of a double whammy, really. Waking up and not having to put a tie on for work, and also waking up and not necessarily not having to do anything for my kids, which was a pretty much the part of my life that is most meaningful to me. So there was that. Yeah, just the lack of structure a little bit. I mean, I don't want to give the wrong impression. I still work and earn money doing some odd things here and there, but I can't say as of yet that what I do with my time and how I earn my money is as fulfilling. So it's been an
adjustment on a search. I'm hearing you still on the search that. Yeah,
I think so.
So I that's really interesting that you bring in your family dynamics. Here you and your wife you have three children, right? Two girls and a boy, and so you're raising your kids, and then they're off to college. So in a way, congratulations, you successfully launched your children off. But then you look at your wife and go, okay, now what? We're so to speak empty nesters, which I think is a piece of retirement as well.
Definitely,
yeah.
I have another friend who, whenever something like this happens, a child graduates from high school or someone gets married, he says, "Congratulations and condolences." It's both, really. It's both.
Well, what are some of the now what? What did you do to answer the now what? What are some of the things that you dabbled in, tried out, did something to see if that would work? What are some of the things you did?
Right. So I have a couple of older brothers who are also on second careers. One of them is a cabinet maker, and I worked with him a lot. And my other brother, who's on his second career, is more of a kind of a jack of all trades handyman. And so I help him here and there on jobs. And it's, I've learned a lot. It's satisfying in a more immediate way than teaching is. Teaching, I get day-to-day satisfactions, but, you have to wait 20 years to see if it turned out okay. So working with my hands, it's a more satisfying thing immediately, but maybe because of that, it's not as fulfilling, I suppose, as compared to teaching. So I do the working with my hands a little bit. Some teaching and counseling colleagues of mine started a small company that does school scheduling.
Oh, okay.
You have 60 teachers, 100 classes, 800 kids, 8 periods a day. How do you find the best schedule to maximize everything you want to maximize? That doesn't take a whole lot of time nor earn me a lot of money, but it's something, I guess.
Okay. So that's an avenue you've tried. But we're talking about, what are you doing to stay engaged? I think that's a big part of retirement, and you've tried out several things. What do you think hasn't worked for you?
Well, that's a good question. I did try long-term subbing back where I taught at Notre Dame. There was a teacher, I think she broke her leg, a math teacher, and couldn't get to so I subbed for her for, I think, 6 weeks.
Okay.
And after the first day, I knew, oh man, I should not have accepted this job.
Wow.
I mean, I like to think I did okay. I had some muscle memory, but it was not the same at all. See, part of the problem is I'm a very nostalgic and sentimental person. So, I kind of knew this, and this is, I think, why I decided to retire when my second daughter graduated. It was too sad to be back there without my kids there. It really was.
Oh, wow.
And some of my friends had been able to do it at Notre Dame. I taught their kids going through, and they're still there teaching. But I can't do that. It was too many memories, too many echoes. So yeah, the long-term subbing. Plus, actually, it was a well, for a variety of reasons, I didn't enjoy it that much. Although I was glad to have the opportunity and to realize that that part of my life is over. I didn't get excited about going to work anymore. In a similar way, people ask me, well, I could teach at maybe one of the community colleges here, or our university has classes, kind of remedial classes that I'd be qualified to teach. But honestly, that holds no interest. And I know myself partly through that subbing experience. It wouldn't be for me. A more steady paycheck would be nice, I suppose, but it wouldn't. I think it would in many ways. Yeah, I just wouldn't like it.
I really commend you about that idea about yourself. I mean, you know yourself very well, and you've discovered through that experience of 6 weeks teaching that this isn't for me, and you were brave enough to say this isn't for me, as opposed to hanging in there for the sake of the paycheck or whatever I call it. But there are a lot of guys that after they retire, they either go back to the same thing, or they start and they're miserable, because they didn't do the two things that you just did. Know yourself, and it's okay to say, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And you're able to do that. And so, I mean, you're a very reflective guy anyway, as I know you. And I think that's a big piece for a lot of us guys. We need to work on that skill of self-reflection.
Yes.
And be okay with what we discover in the self-reflection and say, hey, this is where I'm at right now. And, it's okay. As opposed to, I can't admit that, or I got to do this.
Yeah. Well, it probably arguably would have been better had I not come to that conclusion after the first day. But
yeah, right, okay, right. I can't imagine what you said to your wife when you came home the first day.
I mean,
I don't think I should have done this.
It went fine, and I did all right. But yeah, it was a period or an exclamation point that made me realize, yeah, it was well timed. My change, definitely well timed.
This is about I think it's about purpose, finding purpose in one's life. That's different than I got a job.
Yeah,
it's finding a purpose in life. And so, what would you say? What have you discovered about yourself as far as Joe's purpose in life? What are some of your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, I think that's still an open question, and a good question. Well, first of all, I never really fell into the trap of defining myself by what I did.
Good.
And I don't know how that came about, but I do feel fortunate in that I never did introduce myself as a high school teacher to people. In fact, if I meet somebody, I don't think I ever ask what they do for a living until it comes up. Yeah, that's an interesting question for me to try to figure out why I'm like that, because I think that's unusual, at least in this day.
I agree. Yeah, I absolutely agree with that, Joe. And the very fact that you just said, I don't ask a person very soon in the conversation, so what do you do? Because you don't define yourself that way. And you, in a way, by not asking it, you're kind of challenging the person you're talking to. Hey, have you ever thought about what, not what you're doing, but what you're being? What's your meaning and purpose in life?
Can you justify breathing everybody else's oxygen? Can you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
you're breathing in my space right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I didn't really have that working against me, that I defined myself as a teacher. I mean, of course, I was one, and I knew I was one, and I would talk about it if people asked me. But I think I did have that going for me. So there was no, there was no pressure to find a new identity. But as you perceptively realized, I think early on in meeting me, Bill, there still was the nagging question of, okay, what is my purpose? Am I doing what I ought to do? And I know it's coming from a position of privilege. I know I've got what is it called? A first world problem here.
Yeah. Yeah.
My wife Kay is, now our primary breadwinner, and the kids are set, with college and whatnot, and I'm making enough money doing what I do here and there. So I know it's a very privileged position I'm in, and I do feel guilty about that sometimes. I can't really divorce my yearning for more purpose from a little bit of guilt for having more free time than most people my age.
Yeah.
So there's that too, but at the same time, I can't beat myself up over it, but that's part of my staying awake at night sometimes is, okay, I'm here. I'm not without skills. I'm not without, some qualities of leadership, I suppose. Am I doing everything I ought to do to make the world a better place? Honestly, 9 days out of 10, I'd have to say probably not. And that's humbling to realize about myself, but unfortunately, it doesn't always lead to insight about what I ought to do. So I kind of know.
But even ask the question, Joe. I mean, to even ask, am I making a difference? To even get to the place in my head that I can even ask the question, even if I don't like the answer. I'm asking the question. Even that is a phenomenal advance, I think.
I suppose, and I do what I can, kind of where I am.
Mm-hmm.
Right when I retired from teaching, turns out my mom's health took a turn for the worse, and she ended up dying, I think, about a year later. And my sister was the primary caregiver, but my brothers and I certainly did a lot too. So I feel good about the fact that I had that time to be with her as she completed her journey. And right around that time too, I guess I assumed some more leadership in church where you and I met. That rotates in and out, and it's pretty soon to rotate out for me. So I feel good that I had the opportunities and the time that I've been able to share there. But I guess that also puts a punctuation mark on, what's coming next, because I am rotating out of some leadership there. And so I'm going to have more time now. And yet again, I find myself thinking, all right, is there something more I ought to be doing?
Okay. Joe, are you familiar with Viktor Frankl or Stephen Covey at all? Do you know those two authors?
Stephen Covey, yeah, secular. And is Frankl a sacred version of Covey?
Probably. Frankl wrote that wonderful book of Man's Search for Meaning, his experience at Auschwitz during Second World War.
Yeah, okay, right.
And Covey, which I'm sure our generation all read somewhere along the line.
Yes, that's
and Stephen Covey wrote that wonderful book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But they're both of them are talking about meaning and purpose. And Covey goes a little further than Frankl in the stat of actually, let's have an action of, can you write a mission and purpose statement?
Yeah.
And that's a phenomenal thing to do. It is 7 habits, and to actually sit down and write, hey, my name is Bill Roman, and my mission in life is, or my purpose in life is X.
Right. You got a 12.
And to do that, and in my work, I've got a lot of young guys that come to see me trying to figure stuff out, and I got couples as well. That's mostly what my practice is, couples and mostly guys trying to figure stuff out. And I ask both couples and individual, have you wrote a mission statement for your life? And the couples look at me like, huh? Yeah. Have you thought about that? And encouraging young guys our age, your age, younger guy, your son's age, think about meaning and purpose in life. I'm a big fan of writing stuff down and just play with it. Doesn't mean like I'm going to do this for the next 85 years, but a direction, giving a direction in your life. Otherwise, we're floundering around, and you've got some great grounding about, hey, I know this about me, and I know that because I know that this isn't going to work very well for me.
Right.
And so I'm constantly on the search, which is okay.
Yeah, that's probably good advice. When you're forcing yourself to write something, if you're writing it well, distilling it down to its essence and discovering the heart of it all. I probably ought to do that. I have vague, if you were to ask me to write a mission statement in an hour, I could produce a pretty decent one, I think. I have vague, well, perhaps not too vague, but I've got some notions about what I would want to include. Yeah, but that's good advice. I probably ought to, I think I'll take that. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think Chat GPT could probably do that for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, write me a mission statement.
Yeah.
I'm joking, but I'm sure that they'll do something. That might be a good way to get that process launched off, though. Really,
That's not
is
bad. Yeah.
say, here's some ideas I want to think about in my rest of my life. What would a mission direction statement look like for me?
Right. Right.
Well, Joe, what else do you want to say here? Do you say our audience? They're all over the place as far as jobs, careers, or not. Our audience is men and women, and I'm just wondering various places in their life journey, and some of them are probably contemplating retirement, or maybe even asked to retire. That's another option. You're
Yeah.
forced to retire,
Right.
a kind of thing. What might be a couple of ideas, advice, guidance that you might want to give as a veteran of that, and still looking for some other things that you might want to help some of our listeners out with?
Yeah. Someone who's just starting what I'm still, gosh, I guess I'm in my fourth or fifth year now of that. On my worst days, I might call it floundering, but mostly it's still searching, which doesn't have as quite a negative connotation to it. Well, I think just having a little patience with yourself might be my top piece of advice. In addition to all the little odds and end jobs I've had here and there, my wife and I went on a walking pilgrimage during that period early on, and it was a month long. And I remember saying to myself, I'm gonna think, I'm gonna be open to learning what it is the universe has in store for me. And the month went by, and I had new blisters, but no new insight. And I can't be mad about that. That's just the way it's just the way it happened. Yeah,
No,
yeah. Just having
pilgrimage. That's a really interesting idea. An interesting idea.
yeah,
Pilgrimage.
yeah. And of course, again, it's another. I have to admit, not everybody can do that, right? I mean, we were lucky enough to be able to take a month off and do that. And I recognize I'm coming at this from a position of privilege, and not everybody is. Another thing that I hope would have worked for me is it's what astronomers call averted vision. You mentioned I taught astronomy a number of times in high school, and if you're out at night and you're trying to look at a very faint star or planet or comet or whatever, if you focus right on it, you're probably not going to see it if it's faint, because at the very center of your eye is the opening to the optic nerve, and so you don't have any cones or rods there. So astronomers learn if they want to see something faint, they've got to look at it with averted vision, just a little bit off center, and you see it. You see it out of the corner of your eye. Yeah, of course, it's a little bit frustrating because you see it out of the corner of your eye, and then you want to look to it right away, and then all of you can't see it if you're looking right at it. So I was kind of hoping, all right, I'm gonna do whatever the day or the month presents to me. I'm gonna help my brothers out, or I'm gonna, work on the school scheduling. I'm gonna take care of my mom. I'm gonna drive my kids somewhere. I'm gonna do these odds and ends things and not worry about if there's a bigger goal out there for me. And I'm going to hope that I find it by not focusing on it, by using averted vision. I think that's been a helpful attitude.
That's great. Wow.
Yeah. But maybe my vision is too averted because I haven't. I
think you're really on the way here. Seriously. I mean, you and I've had these conversations before about it's less about the destination, which is nice, but it's the journey, how to get there.
Yeah.
And a couple of things that you said, I like that averted vision thing, and patience is another big thing. That's another, I really like that, so to speak, advice. The other one that you gave earlier was don't allow yourself to be defined by your work.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible temptation that we all have, at least in this culture of America that we grew up in.
Right.
Because so I think John Kabat-Zinn says most of us are human doings instead of human beings.
Yeah, I like that.
I think he's right about that. And those are great ideas that you've presented to us.
Another one, Bill, if we have time. Boy, look at me. I'm on my high horse here. You asked me for some advice, and I've got 4 or 5 pieces of advice.
Good.
Is along with that, I've never defined myself by what I did. I've never really bought into the whole idea that you have to find your passion in life. And maybe it's just an issue of vocabulary or what, but I mean, I enjoyed teaching. I did. I wouldn't want any other career as my main career, and I have wonderful memories, but I don't know if I would say I was passionate about it. Really. I mean, I enjoyed it. I was good at it, I think, but it's not like I felt, oh, that was the big passion of my life, and now I need to find the next big thing I'm passionate about. I think that's a bit of advice that ill serves people.
Really? Okay.
I do, and you may disagree, and I suppose I imagine a lot of listeners will disagree. I have my sister-in-law is a former school counselor, and I know she would disagree with me about that, but I just don't think that that's all that healthy, because you may find yourself earning a living, and it's wonderful and it's satisfying and it checks a lot of your boxes, but I'm not sure but maybe the word passion doesn't apply. It kind of reminds me of recently I reread of the book Self-Consciousness by John Updike.
Oh, yes, right.
Yeah, and towards the end he says a line that I'd remembered reading the first time around, and he says the self's responsibility is to try to achieve rapport with the universe, if not rapture.
Wow.
And I like that for a lot of reasons. First of all, he put the self's responsibility. So you do have a responsibility to yourself.
Mhm.
You know, the fact that I'm asking these questions and you're helping me ask them, and other people are asking them, that's important. You know, you do have a responsibility to yourself, to your happiness, to your family, to the world at large. You have a responsibility, but it isn't necessarily to find your rapture every single day, because there may not be rapture with the universe, however you define it.
Yeah, that Joe, that's terrific. I really like that. I love Updike anyway, but that's just a great line, because rapture for so many of us, I just want to be happy. They may not use the word rapture, but it's kind of like happy, and good luck with that.
Yeah.
And I'm constantly miserable because I can't find a job that makes me happy.
Right. If you can achieve rapport with most of your day, you're
Mhm.
probably doing all right. Yeah.
That's a great line, because my dad worked in a factory. That was all.
Mhm.
He was a blue collar. He was a supervisor, but still he worked in a factory. And I don't think my dad lived his passion at the factory,
Right.
but I think he had rapport with the world. And he just said, he was one of the greatest generation, World War II vet.
Right. Right.
And it was one of this is duty. Duty is, to your family, to your job. Those are duty bound. I mean, like I said, he was a veteran in the service.
Mhm.
And you get rapport by doing those kinds of things, as opposed to, it's all about me, and if I'm not happy, I'm going to be miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
There's a lot of bad advice out there, I suppose. And again, maybe I'm probably in the minority in thinking this, but looking for your passion, that seems like it may not be the most fruitful view to try to achieve.
I think you're right about that. Honestly, I know one thing about passion: it sells books, and you and I could go on the road and do a seminar or something. Uh,
We I
almost
mentioned
finding your rapport.
my sister-in-law, a lovely woman, my wife's sister, former school counselor, and she has three sons, she and her husband, and great young men. I love them. I remember talking to them the summer I retired from teaching, and I mentioned that some friends and I started this little school scheduling company.
Yeah.
And this was two different walks. We were at like a little vacation area. I took a walk with one of the boys, and then a walk with another boy, and both of them separately said, "Oh, that's great. You found your passion, school scheduling." Like, and the other guy said, "What an interesting thing to be passionate about." And of course, it was the language of their mom, right?
Right. Oh, of course.
I had to laugh, like, no, I'm not passionate about school scheduling. I'm not sure anybody can be. Like, just I felt a little worried. I felt a little worried for these young men, because if that's what they're going to be judging their jobs by, they could be in for some disappointment.
Yeah, oh, for sure. And
Yeah.
I think the whole scheme of, passion, happiness, it sets you up for this isn't going to work out very well, guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
I often quote a line, you're familiar with the Serenity Prayer that
Oh, yeah.
Reinhold Niebuhr might have read, God grant me the serenity. But there's a second part to it that hardly anybody knows. But it has a line that says, so that I might be reasonably happy in this life.
Right.
Just being reasonably happy. What a challenge that is.
Reasonably happy. I
Of
like
course,
that.
I just want to be happy. Let's just try reasonably happy.
I like that. That's pretty good. I got to remember that. Yeah.
Okay, Joe, well, let's kind of wrap things up. This has been a great conversation.
I've enjoyed this.
This has really been good. And let's wrap things up. What I like guests to do, hey, you and I are standing in the lobby of a building, and we're going to go on the elevator, and we get in the elevator and the door closes, and we got, I don't know, a couple of, 30 seconds, maybe not even that much. And I ask everybody, hey, can you give me an elevator speech of what do you want our listeners to remember about our conversation, you and me today? Where it might be a line or two or whatever. What do you think?
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess I would hope that people remember that, it is okay not to know exactly what the month or the next year or the next 5 years is going to bring. You probably have a responsibility to do something with yourself and to make the world a better place. You probably have a responsibility to do something, but don't beat yourself up finding the perfect thing you ought to be doing, because there may not be one perfect thing you ought to be doing. There might be a dozen, and you can do a little bit of each, maybe.
Oh, I love it. That's great. And the elevator doors open and we can go on our way.
All right.
Thanks, Joe, very much. Joe Gerhardinger, we had a great conversation about what's it mean to retire and find a new meaning and purpose in your life. So wraps up another episode here on Guy Shrink. So if you're listening to us, just drop us a review. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts as well. And if you want to drop me a note, bill@guyshrink.com. So thanks a million for listening. Joe, thanks a million for talking with me. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.
Thank you.